Welcome to Breathe In, Scream Out, a podcast for feeling it all, one breath and scream at a time. I'm Katie Healy, your guide through this sacred mess called life. Here in this podcast, we'll feel everything. We'll cry, we'll laugh, we'll scream, and maybe scream again. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to Breathe In, Scream Out, a podcast for feeling it all, one breath and scream at a time. I'm your host, Katie Healy, and today I am bringing you a very special guest episode. Today's guest is Trish Barillas. Trish is a very dear friend of mine, family really at this point, and more importantly, she is a life coach and a creator of positive change. Trish has been a life coach, mental health advocate, for over 20 years. She's been in this industry before it was cool to call yourself a life coach. And she is a big advocate of all things mental health in terms of helping folks, her clients, through one-on-one work and workshops with anxiety, panic disorder, and a big advocate of medication, which is something that I didn't really know much about until I became so close with Trish. In today's episode, we get into all things anxiety, life coaching, the taboos around anxiety and coaching, the taboos around medication. We talk being daughters of immigrants, grief. We really cover it all. I am so excited to share this episode with you. I could talk to Trish forever. I am sure you'll feel the same way after this. I am really excited for all the questions that you may have for her. But before we jump into the episode, let's start the same way we always do, with a breath and a scream. Wherever you are right now, seated or standing, just bring yourself to some stillness, eyes closed or gently holding them open with a soft gaze, whatever feels best and right for you. We'll take a few grounding breaths, just a simple inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. I'll guide us through those, but feel free to take all the time you need. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Another deep inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Letting any stress, anxiety, energy that's not yours wash away with each exhale. One more deep inhale. One more deep exhale. And making some space for a little bit bigger of a sound. A scream, a yell, a woohoo, a hell yes. Grab your pillow, hands over your mouth like I'll be taking so I don't blow your eardrums out. Whatever you need, we'll take it together. Wherever you are in the world, plenty of reasons to scream, release some sound, and there is no sound more healing for your own body than the sound of your own voice. So we'll take it together on the count of 3. We'll make some sound. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and flutter your lips. Maybe give your body a little shake. That sparks something in you. Just helping release anything that's not yours. Ground into your own energy, your body. Feel your seat beneath you, your feet beneath you. Slowly begin to come back to your breath. You can go ahead and just gently start to flutter your eyes open if they were closed. We're going to jump on into this episode with Trish. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome to Breathe and Scream Out, Trish. I am so happy to have you here. Thanks for being here with me today.
There's no place I'd rather be, Katie Healy.
So I gave a little intro about who you are, but life coach, creator of positive change, my dear friend, my family. I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you. And before we really start to dig deep, the question I ask all my guests first and foremost, what are you screaming about, Trish?
Well, it probably would have been different if it was 2 weeks ago. But right now, I'm screaming about the state of our world, where we're at with immigration, just all of it. The life is lifing in a way that I didn't really think was ever going to happen in my lifetime, but here we are.
Absolutely. And I know we're both daughters of immigrants that came here for a much better life that they were able to give us. Your parents back in Guatemala, my dad no longer with us, but I'm certainly screaming, kicking, cursing about it too. So I feel you on that big time. And starting there, I would just love for you to share a little bit about who you are, what you do, so my listeners can get to know you a little bit better.
So I am a daughter of immigrants. My parents are both Guatemalan. My dad did come here illegally and then got his green card through my mom who is now a citizen. I was born and raised here in New York, and I've been coaching for 20 years now. So always knew that my journey was to help and or assist people in some way, shape, or form. Didn't realize it was going to be coaching, but that's just how life kind of unfolded for me. So I went to a life coach. I was studying to become a child psychologist. That was aggressive, and I just felt like, I don't like things in a box. I believe heavily in therapy, but I also felt like there was so much that could be done to, mentally sound people, but didn't have access. So coaching just kind of made its way, and I studied it in like 2004, before Instagram, before Google, before wellness,
Before it was cool and popular to be
OG coaching, where when I graduated, they're like, get a brochure and have some business cards.
And a lot of the work you do as a life coach, you work with clients one-on-one, you do workshops, specifically you work around anxiety, mental health, or how would you describe if you're working in session with someone? I know it's so individualized, but if you were working in a workshop or a session, like what is your specialty?
My niche would really be anxiety and breakups. I think those actually hold the biggest buckets. But then there's also, especially for women, how to come into your power, how to break negative thought patterns, also how to get into a job that you want, not just a job that you need to hit because it pays XYZ, but how to really come full circle as we, get older and we evolve. What does that look like? Because we have many chapters in our lives. And just because we started one thing doesn't mean that that's where we land.
Absolutely. And, I kind of feel this way about the grief work that I do until you really experience grief in a deep way, not just loss of a loved one, but a lot of times that's how we refer to it. But you can't really, I don't know that I would come to me if I was offering grief coaching or work without having any experience with grief.
Exactly.
And I know you've had your own experience with anxiety, mental health issues. So can you share a little bit about why anxiety, or this bucket or niche for you?
So I've always had anxiety disorder. It started when I was 5. I was also going back and forth to my country when I was 3 months old. The culture shock was very severe. I just didn't know I didn't know where I fit in. So I lived on an estate to these very wealthy family, and they were kind enough to take my parents in. So I didn't realize that wasn't actually my life. Like, to me, It was my life. But then when, I got thrown onto a flight and then I went to a third world country, I was like, oh, this is us. And I was like, oh my God, we're broke. We are poor. Like, what is happening? So I couldn't really understand the dynamics. And I'm assuming where a lot of my anxiety started, because especially as immigrants, my parents aren't educated. So they just had to find jobs to find a job. So nothing was really secure. Our house they could have fired my parents and we would have been on the streets. They didn't have savings. They didn't understand how anything worked really here. So by like 13, it was when I kind of stepped in and became more of like a parentified child. And I just didn't, the anxiety was just always there. It's also generally genetic. So I definitely get it from my dad. He has a ton of anxiety and I just didn't understand it. So growing up, we didn't have the accessibility that kids do now. So I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't really pinpoint it. I didn't really know how to map it. And then finally, when I figured it out, I educated myself. I got myself the help that I needed. And then it wasn't until meds, and that wasn't until I was like 37, that I realized that I didn't have to suffer the way that I did. And then I always was seeking out psychology, not so much because I was like, I need to help everybody. I need to help myself. So the only way I was going to do that is if I studied psychology. Like, let me study it, let me understand it. And there's not a lot about it. Now there is, but back, I went to college in like 1996. So we didn't have a lot accessible to us. I didn't have a computer. We didn't have computers. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's mind blowing. So I decided as a coach for anxiety, I wanted I wanted someone like me to talk to when I was going through a lot of these transitions, like going away to college for the first time, adulting, understanding breakups and how to go through a breakup. And like you were saying with grief, it's kind of like love. If you haven't been in love or got your heart broken, you will never understand the magnitude. And some people will like roll their eyes until they're that person, and then they're calling psychics and they're going to mediums and they're like, tell me, reading all the books. So it's true, until it affects you, until you walk through that hell, you don't seek it and you won't understand it either. So I think there is a difference, and none of us will not experience grief. It's impossible unless you're a raging narcissist. But
that's a different episode.
Yeah, you have to experience grief and anxiety in this day and age. You can't avoid that either. I mean, we are in a mental health crisis. Social media has just taken that, and it's been exploited in a way that these younger generations can't really manage their emotions. So the world has changed. Technology has changed us. So yeah, it's the whole reason I got into coaching was to help someone like me, but now it's to an umpteenth degree.
Absolutely. And you've shared so much that I really want to unpack, and it's right at the top of mind. I'm thinking about, my dad being an immigrant as well. He was a white man. Was a white man, and English was his first language. So the barriers, even that your parents have dealt with being immigrants in this country, it's a totally different spectrum. But I think one thing that most immigrant kids can relate to, or someone who was born with, being raised by a person that was not primarily raised in America, where maybe especially now, and depending on the time, it's a little bit more accessible to talk about anxiety and all these mental health issues. Even more so depending on the culture you're raised in. Anxiety can be super therapy. I know in my family, super Irish Catholic, so taboo.
Oh, the Irish don't do therapy. That's like such a given.
Not over here.
Yes.
Not over here. But it's, you talked a little bit about being a parentified child, and just this idea of how you knew that something was going on for you, and you were experiencing all these highs, these lows, this anxiety that as you now know it. And how did you even find your way to really taking this path when you're taking care of your family, your parents? You're like taking on these things as a child that most people don't have to deal with. How did you, probably your intuition, you're very intuitive, but know that this was kind of the way that you wanted to, whether it was studying psychology in undergrad, going into life coaching? How did you find your way to that acceptance? Because I think about myself a lot and how long it took me to even go to therapy and accept all these parts of myself of doing something completely different than my family system really presented to me or made feel like was possible.
Well, if I didn't do it, then I don't know if I'd be here. It's that bad. It's the suffering is so immense, and anxiety is like this big umbrella, and underneath it has all of these tentacles, so to speak. So people, like, one person's anxiety doesn't really reflect somebody else's anxiety, because there's anxiety disorder and panic disorder and health anxiety. And so there's so many, but mine is pretty severe at times that I knew if I didn't do it, then I don't know if I was going to make it. And that's what's scary, right? Is like the suffering. So I've seen a ton of therapists, but the one that I finally really connected with, who I still have to this day, he kept saying, like, when are you done suffering? Like, when is it enough? And I watched Silver Lining Playbook, and there's a moment where Bradley Cooper takes the pill, because it was like, either you have a chance at life or you don't. Which one are you going to choose? And he takes it. And I remember watching that movie, and I went with a guy friend of mine, and he said, oh, do you know somebody with like a mental illness? And I was like, yeah, me. And it was like one of the first people I told, and his mother also suffered from a mental illness. So the next day I called my therapist, and I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm ready. So it was like, it was so random. Like one movie changed the trajectory of my mental well-being.
Yeah, there is so much stigma still around medication.
Oh my gosh. It's an ego thing, right? I can muscle through it. I can, I'm stronger than this. I can handle it. Look what my parents went through, blah, blah, blah. Like there's just so much comparison, but we're wired differently. And sometimes we're just not wired in a way that is sufficient for our serotonin, for our dopamine. So to me, I was just like, well, what's the worst that could happen? It can't get worse. Like there's no way it was getting worse. And I would lose so much weight. I couldn't function. So it was either do this, get meds, have a life, or not. And I will say, if I didn't get on meds, there's no way I would have gotten married. There's not a chance that I would have gotten married. No way.
And I find not just the stigma, but with your clients, what do you think? And you're a life coach, so it's a little different, and they have their own therapists and folks that they work with too, perhaps. But what do you think is, aside from the ego, some of the like biggest contributing factors that keep people stuck in their suffering, and why they're hesitant to make the leap into taking medication or doing the things that will help them, arguably, or at least trying the things, right? Because medication, there's a lot of things that go into that too, figuring out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, the dosage. There's a whole nother step to that. But what do you find, aside from your own experience with getting on meds, is a barrier for people, why they don't want to do it?
It gets worse before it gets better. And that's the tough part. Getting on, if meds was an easy route, all of us, you wouldn't think twice about it, but it's not. And it has to be very specific. It has to be tapered. It is scary, because if you think about it, you're like changing, the chemicals in your brain. So as an anxious, we don't want to take anything. Like we get nervous taking too much Tylenol. Like, oh my God, am I going to OD on Tylenol? If I drink too much chamomile, is that bad? We have this irrational fear. So to take a medication, because I find that people that live the way that I've lived, with high functioning anxiety, we work so hard to keep it maintained, and we work so hard to just do this, that to change all that and to bring a medication in, you're like, okay, but I know how to do this. As much as it sucks and as horrible as it is, so if I take this one thing and add it, is it going to just spiral? Like, will I be able to handle it? And sometimes it's brutal. There's times where I didn't want to continue, but then I hung in there and I got to the rainbow side. And that's what I really help my clients with, is especially like 90% of my clients are in therapy. So it's like the support that you need when you start your med journey, or any journey, even if you just start therapy, because therapy is not supposed to be easy. It's not.
No.
So, and some people don't want to face their fears.
Most people.
And as people in big cities, it's easy not to, because you can distract, or you put other things into your life that you're using as a crutch to avoid the other things. It could be drinking. It could be working too much. It could be relationships. It could be whatever you want to put in there. So too much of anything is not good. So I think what really prevents people is the fear of having to live a different life. But even though it's not different, it feels different. And then having to like face these overwhelming thoughts that you never wanted to even kind of put out in the universe.
Yeah, and I love how open you are with this part of your journey. And of course, you're like me, you're very much practice what you preach person. What you're putting out there, you want to be standing behind as well. And I think you've opened so many people up to the idea of what's possible for when you're on medication. Even your husband, he was very Mr. Crunchy Granola doTERRA. I
Put
could say
oil
that
on it, fix it,
I could say
drink
that because
this.
he is the reason why we are so close in family. So I can
Yes,
poke
he'll
fun
get
at
props
him.
for that. We'll
He'll
give him
be
that.
he'll be on here eventually, but you first. And I love how open you are about it. It's even opened my eyes up to my therapist. Shout out to my girl, has even floated meds out to me, and yeah, I'm not afraid to admit that sometimes because again the suffering bit. When I can too get in these spirals and these things I just haven't maybe externally people see me one way and then what goes on internally and the things that I still struggle with. And I find even with my clients post COVID now more than ever, anxiety is at an all-time high. From social media, it's at an all-time high. So what would you share to some people about, you've shared a lot about the benefit of how it's helped you, but this idea of like, the way we have to acknowledge how we contribute to our own suffering and this journey, I think we start therapy, we're going to be healed, quote unquote. You know how I feel about that word when someone's like, I'm
I'm
healed. I'm like,
healed.
girl, it's get back to the mat, more work to do. And the process, if I was getting on meds for the first time, what would you tell me about what it might look like, what it might feel like, how things will change, also for the better?
Again, it will intensify whatever it is you feel physically, right? So there's weird things that could happen as side effects. Some a little shocking. Sometimes it affects your libido. Sometimes you get these little zaps. And like what I find about people that are anxious primarily is that they're so observant of their bodies that if one thing is off, then they'll start to spiral, because that's the way that I am. So the benefit though is like it just brings you down to like a chiller mode where you're not on that loop. Like the brain is on that hamster wheel, and then the meds help that wheel to just slow down, and then the hamster can get off the wheel and think about things and then maybe go back on the wheel. Whereas like I would burn out of wheels. I mean, it was just nonstop. I was never rested. I didn't have peace in my brain, in my life. I just didn't have peace. So the benefits for my clients is that they get clarity, they get time to actually be able to do the work meaning whatever it is that they need to look into of like, well, why anxiety? What are we scared of? What are those things? And to dissect them and to really understand them and to then have like a plan. Okay, well, when this happens, I need to prepare for X. Or like, let's say you get seasonal depression. So like, how do we plan for that? You're not a good flyer. How do we plan for that? We know you go real low when you go through breakups. How do we plan for that? Like, there's just so many things that can be a little bit more explained and that you could take the edge off so that your whole life doesn't unravel in a way that it would if somebody was maybe like unmedicated. And it's phenomenal for like women who are in postpartum, women going through perimenopause. I mean, our hormones for women is what wreaks havoc on our systems, because there's people who will be like, I've never been anxious a day in my life. Bam, perimenopause. And they're like, I don't know what's happening. I think I gotta go to the ER. Like, and for me, I'm like, this is old hat. I know what this is. I know this feeling. So there's just so many, I think, benefits that outweigh the side effects. And for me, it's worked out, and I will gladly take it over not being medicated.
Absolutely. And I think it is such a hot topic, quote unquote controversial, especially with all the shit that's going on in our country government wise, and like the access to these things, not even just mental health meds, like all the horrifying stories I've read about folks not being able to get their cancer treatment or their, that my dad went through some of his own trials. He was very sick. It was a little further progressed, but like even thinking the little bit of extra time we got with him and the way folks just their access is being stripped from them. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about the ways I find I have plenty of, and I'll save my rants, but I have plenty of feelings about a lot of the ways our health system is set up and how deeply you have to advocate for yourself. So what would you say to someone who maybe is thinking about going on medication for the first time, and either their doctor, their family, the people around them are poking holes, questioning, calling it bullshit, whatever people do because they don't know, they're not educated, or they're scared and they have their own feelings buried deep about it? What would you say to someone who's maybe feeling even more anxiety about going on meds because of all the preconceived notions about it, or how can they advocate for themselves in terms of getting the treatment and the help that they need?
Our health system for women specifically, or lack thereof,
Yes,
is it's all bullshit, and you have to advocate the fuck out of it.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is talk less about it, find more safe people, meaning find someone that's a therapist that you trust, find a psychiatrist that you trust. Keep your network that you talk about it with smaller, and when you make your decision, stand by it 100% as if you were, ordering your coffee in the morning. You can't let anybody sway you in your decision, because you can talk to one person and maybe they're anti-meds or go to a naturopath. I mean, I've done it all before I went to the med route. So when people are thinking about it, you have to really pick and choose your tribe of who you speak to. And then you have to make your own decision based off your body. And then you have to stand behind your decision 100% and not ask people their thoughts. You tell them what your next move is. You don't ask them. And you're like, oh yeah, I started meds. When? I don't know, 2 months ago. Like, I think the people that you need are the people that feel safe, and you can say, look, I'm going on a med journey. I might need your help because I'm scared and I don't know what the side effects are. And those people might be 1 or 2 people. One of them definitely being your psych and close friends, a family member, somebody that is supportive. But other than that, I don't think that you owe anybody anything.
Yeah, and I also think it's so different for everyone. Sometimes when we get these, I remember the first time my therapist floated it out to me, and like my shock and my horror, and we sometimes think it's like a lifelong sentence, and not everyone needs to. Some folks, sure, it's something they'll be dealing with for the rest of their lives. Other folks, it's like pockets of time where they need it. I have plenty of friends who had to go on it for a certain period of time, whether it was for postpartum or like during COVID especially. And, they're off it now, and it's something that they'll come back to, but they were so against it because of all the ways we're indoctrinated to believe, whatever, from a religious point of view, from a societal, from
Cultural,
community, family.
religion, yeah. I mean, but again, it's like, here's this thing that can help you manage your, the way that you process, help regulate your central nervous system, whatever it might be. But it's also like, you don't have to walk around with a t-shirt saying I'm on fucking meds, I mean, I would rock that shirt, but it's yours and yours only, and that's important. And I just think that we're in a different era where we've never seen this before. Who's gone through a pandemic? I mean, the world is on fire. So we need other things. And yeah, should we be a country that's just 100% medicated? No, but you need something. And whether that is seeking out more facilitators, whether it's doing more Reiki or acupuncture or whatever that is, do that. But if you've done all the things and you're still not finding relief, that's still an option. We have many options. There's many options for us, but you need to figure out what is going to be yours and what's going to be the the game changer. It's kind of like when you're redoing a room and you're like, something doesn't feel right. I need something that either ties it all together or like it's the game changer of the room. To me, that was meds. I was like, I'm still missing something, right? And like, as soon as I got on meds, I was like, is this how fucking people feel? Or this is bullshit. I was like, I could have been anything. I could have taken on the world. So it was shocking to me. I really was floored. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And, your stance on medication, how outspoken you are about it, isn't the only quote unquote taboo part of what you do. I think a lot of folks still roll their eyes, completely misunderstand what it means to be a life coach. Ugh. And the work that you do with people. And I know that's something you've come up against.
I don't even like saying life coach.
I know.
I go by creator of positive change. That's really what I do. But coaching is not therapy. Mm-hmm. Therapy is the why. And let's go through your early childhood traumas and experiences. And that's not coaching. Coaching is how. Coaching is actionable steps. Coaching is accountability. Coaching for me is like, I'm going to light a fire under your ass and we're going to move because we need to move. And if you can't move, I'm probably not the coach for you because it's results driven, which is why I like it. With therapy, you go every week and you talk, like that's not coaching. Coaching, I leave up to my clients, but it's very specific. It's goal focused. You have to show up. You have to do the work. I don't do the work for you. So it really does motivate people. And I've had clients now, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've had clients for like 10, 11 years because life keeps lifing and things get, you lose a parent, you go through a divorce, you maybe had a miscarriage. I mean, there's just so much shit.
Absolutely. And I am big talk therapy advocate. I love it. I've been doing it since Maggie and Charlie told me to get into it. And it's not enough for me. And my therapist knows that too. And if anything, that's why I've chosen to work with her specifically now. I've had a few therapists in the past, and for me, it's a non-negotiable for them to understand. First, they have to respect. They don't need to do it or know breath work or Reiki or acupuncture or all the aspects of what I do. They don't need to understand it or know how to do it, but they need to respect. From my point of view, like they need to respect that this is a very big other part of what I do. Mm-hmm. And even in my therapy sessions, my therapist will be like, are you getting your other like she can kind of tell when I'm not doing all the other parts of this, mm-hmm. right? I can really talk myself into oblivion, picking apart the why, picking myself apart of like why I feel this way, why I act this way, this trauma, that trauma.
Right.
But if I'm not willing to actually process it through the feeling, for me, that's a big part. And then take the steps to change it. I do think, and maybe this is, people would get pissed off at this, but like, people say they want to change, but they actually don't. It's much easier to remain ignorant and safe in the little bubble we've all created for ourselves. And when you're working with a coach, that's not going to happen. Like you're not going to see any results if you're working with a coach and you just want to stay in your silo of yes,
Well, change is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, and people don't like change. They don't. So you're going to fight against it. The best thing I ever did was just to really accept and understand that like anxiety is not a choice. I didn't choose this. No one chooses to have these types of ailments. It's something that just happened, whether it's genetic, haven't found a trauma related to it. So it is what it is. And this is going to be a hot take. And I don't know if it's Mel Robbins. I can't remember who it is. But they were like, you are not your anxiety, so stop saying I'm anxious. Anxiety plays a huge part of my life. It always has. It isn't who I am, but it's definitely shaped me because it hasn't allowed me to do the things that I could have done because of it. So I'll never erase anxiety in my life. I'm always going to have this. But now it's no longer ruminating in my every single thought and moment and day. I rarely think about it until somebody's like, oh, what do you do? Or being on a podcast and talking about anxiety. Other than that, I just go about my life.
And you also mentioned a little bit about if you never got on meds, you wouldn't be married. And you work with a lot of people to help them through these pockets of breakups even. And I think we don't think of, I feel really strongly about this idea that grief is not reserved just for the dead people and the people that we lose. It's like, it's in a breakup. It's in this idea of like, I'm never getting married. And then you meet the love of your life and now you're married, whatever it is, all these these spaces that we box ourselves in and what we look in terms of what that looks like. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the work you do as a life coach, creator of positive change for people in breakups, and how so often we think it's our life falling apart and actually it's a catalyst for where we're meant to be next. And also how in your own life, your anxiety has played into your relationships, leading you to getting married, being married now, and all your take on that.
Okay.
Yeah, two-parter, so let it rip.
I'll take the first one on. With clients that are going through breakups, I love breakups. I think they're fucking amazing. They're brutal, but you learn so much. If you let yourself, you learn so much. And as we get older, especially as women, we decide, what are we going to allow less of? What do we need more of? And then getting to that point when dating quicker. So you're not spending all this time saying like, well, but I've wasted all this time over it. Because let's be real, men, they just get better looking and they're, but for women, like, it's a real fear. It's a real fear. And I didn't meet Charlie, my husband, until I was 39. And my fear was feeling trapped and being someone's property. And again, I come from a Hispanic background, and everything I've seen from my background is scary. Because I'm like, I do not want, as my dad would say, someone's thumb on my throat. Like, I don't want that. And obviously that's very traditional and cultural, but I also was like, what do I want in my life? And going against societal norms. So meeting someone later at life, choosing not to have children, choosing to live in the most expensive city with 0 square footage. Like, I stand behind all my decisions proudly. And for people going through breakups, I'm always curious about it. Are my clients upset about losing that exact person, or just losing a relationship, or losing the idea of a relationship? Because a lot of times I don't know if that was the best relationship, right? Like, I see it as like there's this bubble, and in our bubble we have our life, our career, our family, our friends, our fur babies, whatever you want to put in there. And then along comes this partner, and they kind of like, boop, attached to your bubble, but they're the bonus. Like, they make your life a bonus. They make life easier. They're there, and you're like, my life feels so full, and this person's a bonus. But when that little bubble, you allow inside your bubble, and you allow that bubble to grow so big that it pushes out your friends, and your career is not where it should be, and your attention and then you remove that bubble, bam, whole thing bursts, and you're like in fetal position, like, why? We did that, right? And I did that when I was younger. I allowed men to be my bubble. And then I learned at a very young age that, like, this is not going to happen. I don't want that. And finally, I was dating people to just have a relationship because I couldn't be alone. My anxiety couldn't allow me to be alone. I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know. I was like, I need someone to check in. I don't even know if I like them, but I want someone to text. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, I can't stand this person, but at least they're there. Sorry to anybody that I like dated that's going to listen to this, but
I'm not sorry for this. I'm not sorry to you.
But when I got on meds, it was like, I always said I wanted a partner, but I really didn't. I said it, but it didn't mean it aligned with me. And then I remember I lived in an apartment with all of my girlfriends. We all had our own apartments. It was like friends. So there was like 8 of us in this apartment, and I was the third one in, and I was the last one out because I was holding on to dear life. Like, nope, I'm good. I don't need anybody. I'm okay. And I woke up one day and I thought, fuck, I'm going to be alone. I am. I'm going to be alone. And with the meds, I started to understand how my anxiety played out in relationships, what I needed to change, what felt good and safe for me. And I met Charlie, and he teaches on human behavior, so it actually really worked out. And we kind of had the same mindset, and he made it very easy for me to get engaged. Like, we had to talk about everything. I don't like surprises. Don't pick out my ring. I'll pick out my ring. We are equal. So he really treated me as an equal, and that's what made it feel safer. So when people, and my sister, I think, asked me once, she was like, why Charlie? Like, of all the people, why him? I said, because it was easy. But was it easy, or was I ready and medicated? You know?
And it wasn't just easy. There's plenty of you, even in your relationship early on, there were plenty of challenging moments. So it felt easy because the way you both, who you had arrived into being.
Was easy. Yeah, the communication was easy. There wasn't, there was no spikes. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, oh my God,
no hot and cold.
No, it was like, and he's also, as you know, he is like a monogamous relationship person. So once he's in, and it just worked. And my anxious attachment, which I used to have, no longer survived because I'd grown out of it, and I was very secure and he was secure, and I was like, oh, this kind of works.
Yeah, and going back to what you shared earlier about the way we can design our lives around these people we get into romantic partnership with, I think now more than ever, especially, I know you feel very strongly about this and have a really amazing group of women in your life like I do, and we do that for each other, but now more than ever, like 100 times out of 100, women had to get married. Like, women did not have a choice. We had, in order to survive. The men have no, I mean, I was going to say no shade, but all shade. Men have designed this society to, keep women, like like Coconut Buddha says, under their thumb. And I think all of those years of indoctrination, not to get on my soapbox about like women being independent and making their own choices, but we forget we have so much choice now. And so just because it's not happening the way we thought doesn't mean, 1, that it won't happen, or 2, that we need to even subscribe to that way of being. And I know your family way more traditional in terms of gender roles and how things play out. But even, I know I love your parents so much. I know them so well. And I see that, but I also see how your mom is her own person and your dad is his own person, and how they work together. But I'm sure, coming from a Hispanic background, that's also it was probably challenging for you to be doing everything out of the norm, quote unquote, for anyone not watching the YouTube. I'm doing a lot of air quotes here, but our families really want to push their way of being onto us, and it can feel even harder to find a partner when you're not doing it the way that they did it or how they agree with it. But I think it really paid off for you, because you ended up with someone who saw you the way you, like, how you were ready to be seen, and the relationship you were really ready to be in.
What I would say, which makes, I think, my situation different. If I grew up in Guat, right? Like, we wouldn't be.
She would have been married.
I would have 8 children. God knows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what this life would be. But the fact that my parents were immigrants and weren't educated and didn't understand, they allowed me to make so many choices at a very young age, and they wanted to break the cycle. My mom's one of 11, my dad's one of 7. My mom has had to support a lot of her family. There was just so much, like, they had to give so much of themselves and give up of themselves that with me and my sister, I think it came to a point where my dad always said, don't fucking get married, make your own money. You know, don't, if anybody asks for a favor, like, be careful, it's going to come back. Or if you ask somebody for a favor, he was just really adamant about me not owing anybody anything. And then when I got older and they were like, shit, she's not getting married, I was like, that's your fault. Like, you chose to help break the cycle, and now you're asking me where your fucking grandkids are. Like,
Yeah, live.
that's not going to happen. And my mom, oddly enough, is so happy that I didn't have children, because she's like, I understand you and I support. She was very supportive. She was like, New York is tough. It's expensive. You have this, you have anxiety. Like, she never for a second was like, oh, you should have a kid. My dad, a little bit different. But I think if they weren't as supported, it would have caused a lot more issues in our dynamic. But because they were so open to letting me do me, and knowing that, like, I was going to break this cycle, like, I'm not going to be the same as all of my entire fam. I'm not. I'm literally, I don't know how many cousins I have. I lost count, but I think I'm probably the only one without children. And there's a lot of us. There's like well over 100 something of us. So,
Wow.
And I'm happy that my parents didn't give me a lot of shit about it. And they were like, do you? And also, they're my kids. So I'm like, I already have 2 kids. So, like, I'm already stressed. I don't need more.
That's a really interesting perspective, because even I think this patriarchal society we live in, like, people would always ask my dad, even when he was sick in the hospital, nurses would be like, do you want her to get married? And he was like, that's not why she exists. Like, she doesn't exist to get, why are you at? And it depended on the day, if he was in a good mood or if he was happy Frank or pissed off Frank, it's how he would respond. But that was very much the rhetoric. And my mom's not, she was born in America, in New Jersey, grew up here, never lived outside of the States, but it was very much like the don't get married, don't have kids rhetoric. So I can relate to that. And it was just never something in and I know I have friends who grew up in very different situations. My parents were both hyper independent, and it was not like they're not asking us about our love lives. They're not, it's not the center for them. And my mom often says it now, their priority was making sure that they raised children that could, if something happened to my parents, that we would be okay. Like, that we knew how to take care of ourselves. And maybe that made us also a little hyper independent too. But like, it's so interesting. Our parents, even you sharing about your dad having anxiety, but you having a totally different trajectory and experience with it, like, especially immigrant parents, like, they're really just doing the best that they can. 9 times out of 10, they can't be thinking about, I'm feeling anxious, my child needs this emotionally. It's like food, shelter, water. And I certainly had more than enough growing up, but it wasn't so much to go around with 4 kids and a business, my dad owning a business in Manhattan, my mom working full time. And it took me a long time to appreciate that, even though a lot of times they maybe couldn't give me what I needed emotionally, like, they too were doing the best they could with what they had and just like what they know.
But also, it's generational. I'm a Gen X.
Okay.
Like, and nobody tracked us. Nobody knew who the fuck we were. The world wasn't as crazy. Like, my parents didn't know if I went to someone's house, if I was like getting fed or not. Like, they didn't know. Who knew? You walked out that door, you were gone. And the rule was just like, call the landline or come home before dinner. But both my parents worked. My dad worked 6 days a week. My mom worked 6 days a week. I mean, they were never not working. I didn't come home to someone like helping me with homework. They could barely read English. Like, so Pi and I really just taught ourselves or had other families help us. So back then, I feel like community was really a lot stronger, and you knew everyone. Like my parents knew all my friends. They knew all my friends by name. They knew their house. Like you knew people. And in this, whatever this world is, you don't know anybody, you know? And I think that also is what makes things so different, because Gen Xers, like none of us talked about emotions. None of us, you just didn't. It wasn't, it just wasn't, that's not the generation we grew up with. So even when I first talked to my parents about therapy, my dad was like, "Oh, are you crazy?" Like that's their first thought. Like, are you insane? Or do you need to go to the loony bin? And that was the stigma around it. Was like, oh, if you go to therapy, you're gonna go to an insane asylum.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother had a similar reaction. I remember when my dad was already sick, when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do Reiki," and he was like, "What?" You know, he was in the hospital bed, still judging me. Like, well, what the fuck is Reiki?
It's so foreign.
And it's exactly, it is. But like when you think about it, when you like it is so foreign in the concept, right? But when I see my ancestors and what they do, and what your family and what they like, your father being a gardener and like taking care of property in that way, and like nurturing that sort of plant life, and your mom being a chef and a cook and nurturing, and like you and Pi do your own version of that. You both become healers in your own way. And it is so foreign sometimes to them, but I'm like, you're doing the same, you did the same thing. You just called it something. Like it's still, it is in our lineage, and it's what in our ancestry, especially in Guatemalan culture, you have so many ancestral practices and like special ways of honoring both living and deceased, and like
I mean, we're Mayan. I'm 48% Mayan Indian. I mean, we've got some traditions up the ass. You know, there's a saint for this, there's a blessing for that, there's a tea for that, there's something for something.
I'm always so fascinated and appreciative of your mom and all the lengths she goes to really continue to honor those traditions, and you do it in your home as well. How do you think that's played a role in who you are as a person, your life? I know from my perspective, I'm always so appreciative and fascinated to hear about like your grief process with your family and like the 7 days you spent honoring them. Like, can you talk a little bit about how that
9 days? Yeah, actually my mom she is on her 7th day. It changes per year. So she was just praying last night first. She's always praying. Someone's always dying or being born or getting married, or there's a quinceañera. They're very busy. But death is not something that we ever looked at as like a bad and or sad thing. It was always celebrated. Like death is celebrated. We used to have the body in the house for like 8 days. So me growing up, I used to play around my grandpa's coffin. Like he's in there. We just played around him. Like it wasn't shown to me like that. Guatemala or Hispanic countries, like we have just beautiful traditions in honoring the dead. We all pray together. Everybody comes every single day. We sit, they sing. It's so beautiful. And there's flowers, and there's pictures, and there's food, and there's chickens and dogs. It's just life. Life is just happening all around, but you're still sitting there, and you invite everyone into your home. Anyone can come in. Doesn't matter what you're wearing, what you look like. And then in the cemeteries, they're so beautiful. They're colorful. I've been playing in cemeteries for my whole life. We used to I was just telling the story yesterday. There's this long grass that grows in the cemetery. So me and my cousins, there was like 15 of us around the same age. So we would tie them, and then the goal was to run through it and see who would trip first. And while we were doing that, our parents were changing out the flowers. Everybody has a mausoleum. So all the mausoleums are built differently. They're either colorful or they're brick. Ours looks like a cute little stone house. So my mom moved. She can also move dead people around. So she moved my parents, my dad's parents. So it's my grandpa, grandma on my dad's side, my mom's parents in this mausoleum, and then there's 2 slots for my mom and my dad. But my mom, for Christmas, gave up her slot. So now I have her slot. So it's going to be me and dad with the grandparents, and then she's next door with her brothers and sisters. So like to me, that I think that I love knowing where I'm going, and I love being in the mausoleum, and I've been there since before I could walk. So having death be so common and talked about and celebrated, like even when any animal, if my cat died, when she died, I had an ofrenda for her, I played music, it's like I really just embraced it, and I didn't feel the sadness. I was like, she's getting sent with love. I think the American tradition is quite odd. I just don't understand it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But my parents have always taught us that grief is not a bad thing. And my dad always says, like, when he dies, of course it's going to wreck me in ways I don't understand. But he's like, I want a fucking mariachi band. And I was like, I will throw you a banging party. Banging.
My dad was going into brain surgery, and he's like, wait, the party. We're like, you're not dead yet. Like, let's make it through the surgery. And he's like, giving us the specifics of what, and of course it's devastating and has been for me in a lot of ways. But I think even seeing, and I grew up in a neighborhood or a city where everyone was Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican, we were the only Irish family. So I was privy also to seeing different practices. And in Ireland too, you would have the funeral. It was a different process, but you would be laid out in the home, and like, we know how to do these things, and we've taken it out of the hands of our community, our family. We've created a fucking capitalistic structure around taking care of the dead and appreciation. And when it comes, again, when we come back to it, like, even though our parents may not understand what we do, it's like we're all doing the same thing. Like, your parents probably don't see themselves as healers per se, and they do some of the most nurturing, caretaking, supportive things to like create a life just not for themselves but for your whole family. And I think
we have, you've been to the house. There's a saint, Santa Rosalia,
size of you. She's the size of you.
She's huge, and she holds a skull in her hand. She's holding a skull, and my dad prays to her every single night. My mom prays to her. I pray to her anytime. When I almost lost my dad during COVID, I was on my hands and knees to that woman. And
your mom puts
begging.
Fresh offerings, flowers, like also paying respect. Yes.
Every day.
Yeah.
And the garden is meant to fill her spot. It's not for people to view the garden. It literally, my dad was like, your mom asked me to plant all these roses because that has to go to Rosalia. And I'm keeping her until after I pass away. I'm pretty sure that's when I'm going to donate her to a church.
Okay.
But she's been in my family for generations. I want to trace back where she actually came from, though. Like, who got her?
Yeah.
Like, how did who decided that this was in their home?
Yeah.
It's such an odd thing.
I think there's a lot of folks who probably, myself included, who can get a little, I'm just starting to come around to this idea of prayer again after being in Catholic school for I was certainly coming up against it. And I think a lot of times when we think death or ritual, we think religion. And like, there's so much ritual in all of our ancestors. And, when we got to go to Lake Atitlan and just seeing all the different parts of culture that are so much outside of, a lot of times, especially Irish culture is deeply tied to Catholicism, but it goes so much deeper that, before there were those things, we knew how to take care and how to honor and how to appreciate. And I know it gets muddied with all of these other systems we put in place, but when it comes down to it, like those offerings, those prayers, those appreciation, the celebration, your family,
I love it
that's so beautifully.
Much. Like, especially for like Dia de los Muertos, like every year my ofrenda gets bigger and bigger, meaning like what I add to it. And then unfortunately the people I have to add to it, my pets and whatever. But I'm like, it creates happiness inside of me. And then I like people to see it, and some of Charlie's family have started to build like mini ofrendas. And I'm like, yeah, you're just honoring people that you loved and you're celebrating them. And it's never not happened in growing up in my family. So like, I don't know anything different, but I always tell my mom, like, I want to learn all of the things, like exactly how to do it. Cause there's like, water that goes out at a certain time. And so this year I told her specifically, I need to really write down everything very strategically so that like I can keep doing it. Cause I love it so much. And I know she appreciates that because it means a lot to her. And even though she's super Catholic, I wouldn't say I'm Catholic. I would say I'm spiritual.
Yeah, me too. And I think all of this is a really good reminder, and something we were talking about earlier before we got on that I wanted to bring back up, that especially now more than ever, when we're in another recession, when so much is being taken from us, when inflation and feeling like, the first thing to go are the quote unquote luxuries. And we see some of these things like offerings, like creating these spaces, like going to yoga, like coming to therapy, seeing your life coach, going to all the, going to theater, doing the creative, artistic. We see these as quote unquote luxuries.
Right.
And really, they're actually such an integral part of...
They're necessities.
Yeah, of especially now more than ever in the society that we're living in.
They all should be covered by insurance, but that's also a different podcast. But yes, it's if you have money to, buy your $8.33 mocha chai caramel crap, whatever it is, like, you can figure out how to get healing. Like, you can. The one thing I think I learned growing up now as I gotten older and just doing this work is like, I can't put my mental health on the back burner ever. I can't, because it'll come back to bite you tenfold and you'll be paying more because your body will shut down, or sometimes you can get some other disease. Like, you just don't know. So mental health, you just really have to pay attention to the signs within yourself and within your body, and do the things, do the hard things. You can do hard things. We can do hard things. And sometimes we need a little help on the way. And that could be your therapist. That could be medication, whatever it might be. Like, even Wally, my dog, like, the amount of therapy that dog gives me, he's my everything. He's my emotional support animal.
And I think that it's hard. It's challenging. I understand that a lot of us of a certain age raised to think that these are all additions, and trying to help people realize that so much of the other shit and crap we've bought into of like the things that we need are actually the luxury, and the things like, do you really need that extra pair of sneakers? Do you really need that, when you could potentially, even if you can't afford right now, because I understand things are so expensive, like a one-on-one session, maybe you go to a group session or a group class. There's so much healing in community as well. And I find, I don't know, everyone deserves to be paid their worth and their service, but I always encourage people too, when I can only speak for me, when they really feel like they need a session, and I'm like, listen, if money is this challenging in this moment, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. And there are so many people that are open to, yes.
I mean, I did it during pandemic. I slashed my prices. I had never been that busy in my whole life. Is it sustainable? No. That's just who I am, and I wanted to give back. I actually, for the month of July, I'm also giving huge discounts on my current and or prior clients, because I think we need it now more than ever.
Absolutely.
I'm probably going to have to throw in a workshop. I just did a Divine Rage workshop with a company. Divine Rage is it's all the things that we need. And it's not just for women, it's for men as well. But, it's easier to buy those pair of sneakers. It's easier to buy that cute outfit because you don't have to work. You don't have to do the work. And that's what people don't want to do. They don't want to do the work. So you just have to ask yourself, like, okay, well, if you don't want to do the work, you're going to continue to suffer, and you have to accept that.
Yeah, how we contribute to our own suffering. I ask myself that all the time. And also, it's not the Super Bowl of suffering. It's not like, oh, I don't suffer as badly as Trish, or Trish doesn't suffer as badly as me. We all have our own version of what that looks like, and we're all going through it.
Everyone is entitled to their own suffering, and it doesn't matter what it is. Suffering means different things to different people. I mean, I had my therapy session this morning. Great. Feeling great. You know, is it hard? Sure. But as it should be. If it gets easier, that means that I probably don't need any more therapy at the moment, right? But it should be hard.
Or you take a break. You know, there's been plenty of times where I've taken breaks, and then or I need a new therapist. Or
I just went back. I was like, I can't. There's too much shit going on. I need to dump somewhere. I need a safe space. So,
I think I think the ultimate in these next few years, if we make it, the ultimate version of fingers crossed. There's a lot of happening astrologically, which I spoke about in a previous episode, but like more than ever centering care, and like the highest priority and the greatest commodity right now is going to be a regulated nervous system amongst all this bullshit.
I did a virtual workshop 2 weeks ago with a company on how to regulate your central nervous system. I mean, all of these things, and they're not difficult. We just don't make the time. We always are like, oh, we're too busy. My kids, my husband, my events. It's like, no.
Yeah, it's consistency. We want it to be a one and done sort of situation, but unfortunately, that's just not how that's not anything worthwhile. And life isn't one and done. Yeah.
No, not at all.
I love talking to you. I could talk to you forever. Any final thoughts, feelings, messages you want to share?
For anybody that is finding themselves in a tough time or suffering, is that it's not a life sentence. It's just a moment in time. It's not a life sentence. This isn't forever. It could feel like it, but it's not. And you will move. Everything does, whether we like it or not. You know, we have to evolve. That's just the game of life. So that's what I would like to leave people with. And whatever peace looks like for you, do that, and do it more often. Do it. Schedule it in every week. Where do you find your peace? I don't even care if that means laying on your floor and staring at the ceiling, if that feels peaceful.
I love a little floor time. Sometimes you just gotta stare at the wall. Love floor. We're big advocates of floor time over here. Just lying at the floor, staring at this nothing. Anxious brains unite.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Trish. I love you.
Thanks for having me.
Love chatting with you. I'm sure you'll be back. We can dig into maybe all things breakup, transformation. I know you're so responsible and the reason for so many folks' big, positive, life-altering transformations. And I think you really are such a catalyst for that. And everyone's so lucky to have you, including me.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much. I love you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Breathe In, Scream Out. If you are interested in working with Trish, want to follow her on socials, have any questions for her, I will include all of her information in our show notes from today's episode. She's such an incredible, generous, powerful, smart, grounded resource for all things anxiety, mental health, life coaching. She's definitely someone I constantly refer clients to. She's a really special, fun, incredible woman. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Reach out to her as well. She's always offering virtual and in-person workshops. So give her a follow. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time with another solo episode, and we'll be, as usual, breathing in and screaming out together. Thanks so much.